all ages, even a kid under 11-month-old kid in a stroller. So lots of people coming out on this windy day, waiting for this to take off.
It's just cool to see any plane take off, but when it has a huge shuttle on top of it, it's even more spectacular. Jason Carroll, you're out there in New York City. Is New York prepared?
When you go?
Oh yeah, New York is more than prepared, Carol. Prepared and excited. You heard us here talking about the wind that we're sitting in our livestock, just waiting for this livestock to happen here. Our truck was slowly rocking back and forth. So a lot of us had some questions as to whether or not this flight would actually happen, but we're all hearing it's a go. The music is blaring there in the background, and just off camera, there are lots of people who are lining up for what is supposed to be pretty spectacular ceremony for Enterprise's arrival. Hundreds of folks have been invited down here, school children from New York, from Connecticut, from New Jersey, folks from NASA are going to speak. Also, some folks from the Intrepid Sea and Air Museum will be down here as well. As you know, that will be Enterprise's final resting place. When it eventually gets here, it'll be housed here for several months, and then on June 6th will be another spectacular moment when Enterprise is loaded up onto a barge, and then it'll be sailed over to the Hudson River, where it'll eventually end up at the Intrepid Sea and Air Museum. Once again, some questions about the wind here, but we're told everything is a go. It will land on JFK's longest runway, which is about 14,500 feet long on pole. So right now, everyone's just waiting to see what will happen. But Carol, as you know, even if you weren't invited to this special ceremony here at JFK, a lot of folks in New York City are going to get the opportunity to see Enterprise do its low flyover of the city. Supposed to be down the Hudson River, so folks along the Hudson River will be able to get a view. Folks downtown will be able to get a view of what we call Battery Park City in that area, as the Enterprise makes a flyby to Statue of Liberty. So lots of excitement and anticipation awaiting for the arrival.
Carol? I can't wait. I hear the music in the background there. John Zarella, explain to us who's in the cockpit of that plane. Who's flying the Enterprise to New York City?
Well, it's the same crew, again, that flew, and I'll have to get to their names, but it's the same crew that flew Discovery up there, except, as I mentioned, just the weather officer is different. So I've got that listed, and I'll bring that up when we get them in orbit there, get them in orbit. They never flew in orbit, when they actually take off. And that's the point, too. You know, this was a shuttle that could have flown in space. It didn't have engines initially. It never flew, but it was used for all of those landing tests in the 70s to test the aerodynamics of the space shuttle concept, to make sure that it could, in fact, re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, that they could glide safely back to Earth. So that's what it was primarily used for. But there was some thought of perhaps having it to be the second shuttle to fly after Columbia. But then some of those last free-flying tests that they did off the 747, they discovered some structural things that they decided to change in the final design of Columbia. So it would have been more expensive for NASA to go back, take Enterprise apart, than it was to just go ahead and say, okay, we're just going to not retrofit it. We're not going to do that. We're just going to, build Columbia, then Challenger, and Discovery, and those vehicles. And thus, Enterprise ends up as a museum piece in 1985 in the Smithsonian. But not until it did all of these things that, without them, the space shuttle fleet may never have flown if they were not able to successfully do those tests out in California. And, Carol, it also spent a lot of time on the road. It was in Europe. It went to an air show in Paris. It went to Germany, to Canada, to Italy. NASA used it as really an ambassador of the space shuttle fleet, flying it all over. It did the U.S. World Fair, I believe, in Louisiana as well, in New Orleans back in 1983. So it's had a very, very colorful history. It's just not a lot of people know about it because it never actually flew in space.
Interesting. Athena Jones, she's wanting to stop,
We're not sure. We don't know how much they could be waiting for. We're all watching it to see when they smack it up. It's interesting to hear a lot of the history that John Zarella talked about. The plane, the 747 jumbo jet that the Enterprise is mounted on top of, interesting history. We're hearing sirens. I'm not sure if that's the plane has an interesting history. It's called a shuttle carrier aircraft 905. That's the technical, sort of fun NASA acronym for it. And it's a 747 that was in commercial use. They bought it from American Airlines back in 1974. It looks now as though this contraption may be moving a little bit. The shuttle on top of the plane is now inching forward, continuing on to prepare to take off. But just to finish up, that plane, that jumbo jet, was bought up to American Airlines back in 1974. And one interesting fact, a little tidbit for you, is that that shuttle, that Enterprise, weighs 150,000 pounds. But believe it or not, I didn't even know that shuttle is mounted on top of that gigantic 747 4-engine plane. It still weighs less than what a fully loaded 747 would weigh normally, because this one is stripped down after the forward cabin. There's no seats in there, no galley, no passengers, no luggage, of course. So it's going to be a lot less heavy. So we're still waiting to see it take off. Still watching it get in place.
Okay, we have Eileen Collins on the phone, an astronaut, actually the first female shuttle commander. And Eileen, thank you for being with us this morning.
Oh, good morning. Thanks.
Okay, so as you're watching this image, what goes through your mind?
Well, of course, I'm sad to see the shuttles go off to a museum. But in this case, Enterprise has been in a museum since 1985. Of course, it's been an Air and Space Museum in Washington. So I'm excited that now we're going to have a shuttle in a different part of the country where people from around the country can see it up in New York. So I think there's some good in this too.
So space travel for NASA has come to a halt. Do you hope that when people go and look at these shuttles in these museums, that it will create an excitement among people again for the space program?
Oh, without a doubt. People are going to see how big the shuttle was, and by looking at the payload bay, we're going to see, just how large the payloads were that we were able to take up into low Earth orbit. But also, looking at the shuttle, we should realize that it took us to low Earth orbit, which really is only about 200 to 300 miles above the surface. And now the country's building I want to say a replacement is the best thing I can think of, but it's actually going to be more versatile and able to take us farther to explore beyond low Earth orbit. Our country will be able to go back to the moon, onto the asteroids, and someday to Mars, and I think that will be very exciting to young people, yes, but everybody that sees the shuttles in the museums.
I can remember, Eileen, when President Bush talked about going to Mars, and everybody was excited about it, and there were initial plans made, and then it sort of all came to a stop.
Well, in fact, I remember that too, and I know people were very excited about it. Space flight is expensive, and it's not just executing, operating, and doing the space flight, but it's developing, and that's where the big costs are. So we need to, continue to do this, and NASA is doing this today. We've got a space station in low Earth orbit. The shuttle built that space station, and the people that worked in the shuttle program can be very, very proud of that space station. But it's there to help us learn how to go to Mars, how to keep people healthy in space for long periods of time, and that obviously is necessary if we're going to safely do deep space.
As we're watching this, you're a pilot, so what does it feel like to be the pilot of that 747 with the shuttle on board your back?
Well, these are very professional, highly trained pilots that are making this takeoff right now, and I'm sure they're very focused on their checklists, their instruments, their flying skills. They know that this is a very important mission. They know they want to get that shuttle up there safely. So I would say they're focused, and their emotions are probably running pretty low, but as they make sure they do this mission safely. But I think once the pilots are done and they get the shuttle up there safely, they're going to be very proud of what they've done, and they've trained for a long time for this, so good for them.
I know they're picking up speed now, so that means takeoff's not far away. We saw a shot of the Hudson River in New York, and you can actually see whitecaps, which means it's quite windy there. How worried is a pilot when you talk about wind over New York City?
Well, you can see they have a very high profile, so any crosswind would, obviously push them to the right or left and make a landing more difficult, also make an approach more difficult. But they have flight rules that would, I would say if the winds were too high, they have the forecast, they would know that, and they wouldn't go. So the winds are within limits for this flight, so I'm sure they're pretty confident. Not to worry.
Okay, do we have